All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really critical blueprint for navigating the massive shifts hitting the HR landscape by 2030. We're pulling our insights directly from Amit G, the CEO of Next in HR, and his incredibly practical guide. And look, here's exactly why you're going to want to pay attention to this framework. It cuts straight through the usual HR buzzwords, right? This isn't just crystal ball gazing or tossing around empty corporate jargon. It's about giving you the specific, tactical steps you can take today to make this incoming wave of change feel completely manageable. So I've got to ask you directly, is your HR team truly ready for 2030? Seriously, think about it. That massive technological disruption we've all been hearing about for years, well, it's not some distant threat anymore. It's happening right now. If your organization is still leaning purely on traditional recruiting and, intuition-based management, the clock is ticking a lot faster than you might realize. Just consider this stat for a second. According to a Second Talent survey, a whopping 94% of companies are going to adopt AI-powered analytics by the end of the decade. 94%. Let that sink in. That is practically everybody. Plus, 87% plan to implement real-time workforce intelligence and conversational AI. The reality is, if almost everyone else in your industry is powering up their HR with advanced tech, standing still essentially means you're going to fall far, far behind. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with why 2030 matters right now, run through the 7 key trends shaping HR, and then dive into a super practical HR playbook. After that, we'll cover the new HR team structures and wrap up with exactly how to measure your future success. All right, let's jump straight into section 1, why 2030 matters now. Because honestly, waiting around to modernize, that's just not an option anymore. The big takeaway here is that these aren't just sci-fi concepts sitting in a lab somewhere. Generative AI, skills marketplaces, distributed work models, these are out in the wild, in production right now at forward-thinking firms. Gearing up for 2030 means designing programs that scale and unlock productivity today. I mean, imagine losing your absolute best engineer just because a competitor's AI matched them to an internal project they were incredibly passionate about and you didn't even know they were bored. Businesses that jump on this now are going to build a massive, practically unbeatable talent advantage when the hiring market inevitably tightens up. Let's pick up the pace a bit for section 2, 7 trends shaping HR. These are the absolute core shifts that every single HR leader needs to keep a very close eye on. Guys, we're quite literally witnessing the death of the traditional job title. Instead of hiring based on some static bullet point resume, the new standard for 2030 is all about a skills-based taxonomy. What that basically means is instead of just hunting for someone who held a generic title like project manager, organizations are mapping out the exact measurable capabilities a person actually has, things like budget forecasting, agile methodology, or crisis comms. This is a total game changer. It instantly boosts internal mobility and slashes bias because you're hunting for verifiable skills, not just a fancy past title. Building on that, let's quickly unpack all 7 of these shifts because they completely rewrite the HR rulebook. First, AI and automation are taking over the repetitive tasks, which frees humans up for the real strategic work, right alongside that skills-based hiring we just talked about. Then there's employee experience. Get this, it's now seen as a revenue driver. How an employee experiences their day will be optimized exactly like a customer's experience, because happy, frictionless employees literally equal more revenue. We're also seeing distributed talent marketplaces and a shift away from those clunky once-a-year training modules toward micro-credentials and continuous bite-sized learning. Plus, data is moving from just telling you what happened to prescriptive people analytics, actually recommending what you should do next to prevent turnover. And finally, mandatory AI ethics and privacy. Regulators are definitely watching, so you can't just unleash AI, you have to govern it. Okay, so how do we actually pull this off? Let's move into section 3, your practical HR playbook. This is where we take all these massive concepts and ground them into a totally actionable 12 to 24-month roadmap. If all this is sounding a bit overwhelming, well, I've got good news. You can break this massive shift down into 6 highly tactical steps. Seriously, you could literally begin this quarter. You start by auditing your tech and data. Step 2, define that skills taxonomy for your specific company. Next, you pilot some low-risk AI tools. Once those are humming along, you build an internal marketplace, tie your learning programs directly to real outcomes, and then finally shift your overall metrics to track actual business results. It's really a step-by-step climb, not one terrifying giant leap. Let's look at the real-world impact of step 1. I know, integrating systems sounds like absolute IT drudgery, right? But the source material highlights a mid-market staffing firm that simply hooked up their applicant tracking data with their interview scheduling and candidate messaging tools. The result? They slashed their time to hire by 18%. So documenting your gaps and creating a single source of truth isn't just admin cleanup, it's a massive competitive advantage with immediate ROI. Now check out how Step 3, piloting AI tools, can play out. The goal is low-risk pilots with really clear guardrails. One recruiting team just added a simple AI scheduling assistant to their workflow. They reduced their scheduling time by a staggering 40%. But here's the best part. While massively boosting efficiency, they actually increased their candidate net promoter score. That's basically a metric of how much candidates loved and appreciated the interview process. That right there is the gold standard for HR in 2030. Using AI to radically speed up the boring stuff while actually making the human experience so much better. Next up, we really need to define a core concept from Step 4. Think of an internal talent marketplace, almost like an internal gig economy, just for your company. Say a department suddenly needs a graphic designer for a quick 2-week sprint. You don't want to go through the whole agonizing process of a new full-time hire. Instead, you tap your own network. It's a platform to allocate short-term projects and build capacity using a mix of internal talent, contractors, and direct employees. This is going to be a foundational capability for the flexible 2030 workforce. It lets you act with incredible startup-like agility. Let's keep moving right into Section 4, new HR team structures. Because, simply put, you cannot run a 2030 playbook with a 2015 team structure. To actually pull off these futuristic playbooks, we are talking about bringing entirely new DNA into the HR department. Just look at these cross-functional roles. You're going to need data scientists actually embedded inside HR. They aren't just hiding in the IT basement anymore. They're sitting right next to your recruiters analyzing talent flows. You'll need AI ethics specialists to enforce those mandatory guardrails we mentioned, making sure the algorithms don't get biased. Then you've got talent ops roles running the internal gig marketplaces and central talent design teams overseeing the whole complex architecture of your workforce. The core HR skill set is shifting heavily, away from basic admin and straight into complex data interpretation and organizational change management. And finally, we arrive at Section 5, measuring your future success. This is all about how HR is going to undeniably prove its strategic value to the rest of the business in the coming decade. The blueprint here recommends using a balanced scorecard built on 3 main pillars: talent acquisition, talent development, and talent retention. But the absolute key here is focus. If your HR team has historically struggled to get a seat at the executive table, this is exactly how you fix it. You start with just one high-impact metric connected directly to revenue or customer satisfaction. Do that and you'll secure executive buy-in instantly, because suddenly you're speaking their exact language. Throwing too many metrics at them early on, that's just going to dilute your focus and confuse your stakeholders. Now, to really lock in that buy-in, we have to completely change the way we report. Honestly, it's time to abandon the abacus. We have to ditch the basic intuition and those old input metrics, just tracking headcount or how many hours someone sat in a seat. By 2030, reporting has to rely on hard evidence and outcome metrics. We're talking about tracking time to productivity, which measures how fast a new hire actually starts contributing value to the bottom line, or tracking your skills coverage percentage to see if you genuinely have the capabilities in-house to launch that new product, or measuring your internal mobility rate. That is exactly how you tie people metrics directly to hard business KPIs. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought that circles right back to where we started. Generative AI, skills-based matching, advanced analytics, they aren't waiting in the wings anymore. They're on the main stage right now. The modernization playbook we just ran through, it's highly practical, it's entirely measurable, and it's ready for you to implement. The cost of doing nothing is just way too high, especially when your competitors are already deploying these tools. So here's my question for you. Are you going to sit back and wait for the future of HR to happen to you, or are you going to start your pilot programs today and build it yourself?